Argentina has undergone a dramatic transformation in which it has become known for its whiteness in South America. In the 2010 census, only 0.365% of the population identified as Afro-Argentine, a stark contrast to over a third of the population being Black in 1800. This shift from a diverse Afro-Argentine community to a predominantly white nation is a result of a troubling history of genocide and deliberate destruction. Government policies and historical amnesia have played a role in suppressing the vibrant Afro-Argentine community. Despite evidence to the contrary, many Argentinians falsely believe that Argentina did not participate in the slave trade or have Afro-Argentinians in the country. This misconception is perpetuated, and even former President Carlos Menem denied the existence of Black people in Argentina, stating, "In Argentina, Blacks do not exist. That is a Brazilian problem." The prevailing perception, both within and outside of Argentina, is that it is a predominantly white European society, with Buenos Aires being referred to as the Paris of Latin America. However, this image is a result of racism that systematically erased Afro-Argentines from the nation's identity. The story that follows is not just a chronicle of the past, it's a call to action, urging Argentina to confront its shadows and embrace the diversity that had always been an integral part of its story. The arrival of African slaves, unraveling Argentina's overlooked history. It's surprising that what happened to Black people in Argentina isn't well known in history books or taught in schools. Reportedly, the country's president, Domingo Faustino Sarmiento, from 1868 to 1874, took actions that severely affected the Afro-Argentine population. People say it was like a secret genocide. By 1875, there were so few Black people left in Argentina that the government didn't even bother counting them in the national census. It seemed like Argentina successfully made the Black community disappear. It all began in the 16th century, circa 1536. Argentina's historical narrative took a significant turn as Spanish and Portuguese colonizers introduced African slaves to the Rio de la Plata region. This marked the commencement of a forced migration that, driven by economic motives, would profoundly shape the trajectory of the nation. The initial arrival of African slaves in 1536 was a momentous but grim episode in Argentina's past. Ships anchored along the Rio de la Plata, disembarking enslaved men and women who were bound in chains. Tasked with laboring in sugarcane and cotton plantations, their arrival laid the foundation for a complex narrative that continues to resonate in Argentina's cultural tapestry today. As the enslaved Africans set foot on Argentine soil, the collision of cultures between colonizers and the enslaved became palpable. The workforce, forcibly removed from their native lands, brought with them a diverse array of languages, traditions, and cultures. However, the prevailing colonial attitudes sought to suppress rather than embrace this cultural infusion. In the years following the arrival, plantations became crucibles of suffering. The enslaved toiled in harsh conditions, cultivating crops that fueled the economic prosperity of the colonies. This exploitation, initiated in the 16th century, became ingrained in Argentina's societal fabric. Centuries later, in 1853, the formal abolition of slavery marked a significant shift in Argentina's historical landscape. However, the termination of legal bondage did not erase deeply entrenched racial prejudices. The post-abolition era presented the challenge of integrating the newly freed into a society that continued to grapple with discriminatory ideologies. This struggle for integration is exemplified by the establishment of village cabildos in Afro-Argentine communities during the late 19th century. Despite the legal freedom granted by abolition, these cabildos, or community councils, were essential for Afro-Argentines to navigate the persistent social and economic barriers they faced. The years following abolition saw these community councils serving as vital institutions for Afro-Argentines, providing a sense of solidarity and a platform to address shared concerns. However, their existence also highlighted the need for separate structures to navigate a society that, despite legal changes, remained deeply rooted in racial prejudices. The post-abolition period stands as a stark reminder that the end of legal bondage was just the beginning of a prolonged struggle for true emancipation and equality within the intricate tapestry of Argentina's complex history. The latter part of the 19th century brought about pivotal changes. In 1880, the federalization of Buenos Aires reshaped Argentina's political landscape. The year 1888 saw the abolition of slavery in Brazil, impacting regional conversations about race and liberation. The mid-20th century witnessed a global shift in consciousness after World War II, challenging established racial hierarchies. In Argentina, the 1960s saw increased awareness and activism within the Afro-Argentinian community. Movements advocating for recognition and equal rights gained traction, contributing to a growing dialogue about the nation's African roots. The arrival of African slaves in 1536 initiated a chapter of Argentina's history characterized by forced migration, exploitation, and cultural suppression. The repercussions of this historical episode extend to the present, influencing societal structures and perpetuating inequalities. Acknowledging this overlooked history is essential for a more comprehensive understanding of Argentina's cultural mosaic and a step toward a future that recognizes and values its diverse heritage. The unexplained decline of Afro-Argentines. The abrupt and dramatic disappearance of Afro-Argentines from Argentina is frequently attributed to two key factors, with the first being the war against Paraguay that unfolded from 1865 to 1870. This conflict, known as the Paraguayan War or the Triple Alliance War, had far-reaching consequences for Argentina's black population. Between 1865 and 1870, the Paraguayan War saw thousands of black soldiers actively engaging in military battles. Their commitment to the cause was both a testament to their dedication to the nation and a reflection of their broader commitment to the fight for justice and freedom. However, the toll exacted by the brutalities of war was profound, leading to a significant loss of black lives. The battlefield, marked by harsh conditions and unforgiving circumstances, claimed the lives of many Afro-Argentines who fought valiantly alongside their fellow countrymen. This conflict, characterized by its intensity and prolonged duration, had a disproportionate impact on Argentina's black community during the specified period. Between 1865 and 1870, the toll of casualties, injuries, and the psychological trauma of war had a long-lasting impact, contributing significantly to the decline in the Afro-Argentine population. The sacrifices made by these black soldiers, often overlooked in historical narratives, played a vital yet tragic role in shaping the demographic landscape of Argentina. Beyond the Paraguayan War, additional conflicts further intensified the challenges faced by Afro-Argentines in the late 19th century. The collective impact of multiple military engagements, spanning years of turmoil, contributed to the abrupt and dramatic disappearance of black individuals from the country. These conflicts, each leaving its imprint on the population, not only claimed lives directly on the battlefield but also had enduring implications on the socio-economic and cultural aspects of the Afro-Argentine community. The years between 1865 and 1870 marked a tumultuous period where the black soldiers' participation and sacrifice, while commendable, tragically contributed to the dwindling numbers within their community. This historical context sheds light on the multifaceted challenges faced by Afro-Argentines, encompassing a turbulent period that ultimately shaped their trajectory and left an enduring mark on Argentina's demographic composition. The aftermath of these conflicts extended beyond the battlefield, permeating societal structures and perpetuating systemic challenges for Afro-Argentines. The post-war years witnessed the continuation of discriminatory practices, limiting access to economic opportunities and perpetuating social marginalization. Afro-Argentines, despite their contributions and sacrifices, found themselves on the periphery of a nation undergoing transformation. The ravages of the yellow fever epidemic on Afro-Argentines, 1871 to 1920. In the annals of Argentine history, the late 19th and early 20th centuries stand out as a period marked by societal upheavals, conflicts, and a formidable adversary that emerged in the form of the yellow fever epidemic. This health crisis, which began its onslaught in Buenos Aires in 1871, unfolded over nearly 5 decades, persisting until the 1920s. Its devastating impact left an indelible mark on the Afro-Argentine population, contributing significantly to their historical marginalization within Argentine society. The timing of the yellow fever epidemic was particularly unfortunate, coinciding with a period already marred by the aftermath of the war against Paraguay and other conflicts. For Afro-descendant individuals, many of whom belong to lower socioeconomic strata, the convergence of these challenges marked a particularly challenging era. The yellow fever epidemic exhibited a cruel penchant for targeting communities with limited resources and lower socioeconomic status, making Afro-descendant individuals disproportionately vulnerable to its ravages. As the epidemic swept through Buenos Aires and beyond, claiming lives and leaving devastation in its wake, the Afro-Argentine population experienced a precipitous decline. The impact was not merely biological, but also economic and social. The socio-economic disparities exacerbated by the epidemic further marginalized Afro-descendant communities within Argentine society. The loss of lives, coupled with the economic struggles that followed, contributed to a decline in their numbers and deepened their existing challenges. The yellow fever epidemic became a tragic chapter in the history of Afro-Argentines, with far-reaching consequences that extended beyond the immediate health crisis. The repercussions of this health crisis lingered long after the epidemic itself had waned, echoing through the annals of Afro-Argentine history. The decline in population and the economic fallout reinforced existing inequalities, perpetuating a cycle of marginalization that has endured into the present day. In addition to the immediate impact on the Afro-Argentine population, the yellow fever epidemic had broader consequences for the entire Argentine society. The demographic landscape of Buenos Aires and surrounding regions underwent a significant transformation. The loss of a substantial portion of the population, coupled with the economic hardships, affected the overall trajectory of the nation. The years following the epidemic saw attempts at reconstruction and recovery. However, the scars left by the yellow fever epidemic were deep and enduring. The Afro-Argentine community, already grappling with the challenges of systemic racism and economic marginalization, found itself further marginalized in the reconstruction efforts. The unequal distribution of resources and opportunities perpetuated the disparities that had been exacerbated by the epidemic, hindering the full integration of Afro-descendant individuals into Argentine society. Despite the hardships, Afro-Argentines demonstrated resilience and strength in the face of adversity. Community bonds became a crucial source of support, helping individuals navigate the challenges posed by the lingering effects of the epidemic. However, these efforts often occurred within the confines of a society that remained indifferent or resistant to dismantling entrenched discriminatory practices. The early 20th century witnessed gradual changes in Argentina's political and social landscape, but the legacy of the yellow fever epidemic persisted. The struggles faced by Afro-descendant communities continued to be overlooked, perpetuating a cycle of generational disadvantage. Discrimination, both overt and systemic, persisted, hindering the full participation of Afro-Argentines in the economic, educational, and political spheres of Argentine society. In examining specific examples, one can observe the enduring impact of the yellow fever epidemic on Afro-Argentine communities. The limited access to quality health care and educational opportunities persisted, with Afro-descendant individuals often facing barriers that hindered their upward mobility. Economic disparities persisted, as Afro-Argentines found themselves confined to lower-paying jobs and limited economic prospects. The cultural and historical contributions of Afro-Argentines were often overlooked or marginalized, further deepening the sense of exclusion. Despite being an integral part of Argentina's diverse cultural fabric, Afro-Argentines struggled to have their stories told and their voices heard. The yellow fever epidemic, with its long-reaching impact on demographics and socio-economic dynamics, became a poignant symbol of the systemic challenges faced by Afro-descendant communities. In the realm of politics, the representation of Afro-Argentines remained disproportionately low. The legacy of historical marginalization, compounded by the aftermath of the yellow fever epidemic, hindered the political empowerment of Afro-descendant individuals. This lack of representation perpetuated a cycle of neglect and indifference, with policies often failing to address the specific needs and concerns of Afro-Argentine communities. As Argentina entered the mid-20th century, efforts to address historical injustices gained momentum. However, the legacy of the yellow fever epidemic continued to cast a shadow over the Afro-Argentine community. The recognition of past wrongs and the implementation of inclusive policies were slow to materialize, leaving Afro-descendant individuals to contend with the enduring consequences of the epidemic. In recent decades, there has been a growing awareness of the need for social justice and inclusivity in Argentina. Efforts to address historical injustices and promote diversity have gained traction, but the journey towards full equality remains ongoing. The Afro-Argentine community, resilient in the face of historical challenges, continues to push for recognition, representation, and equal opportunities. The narrative of their history remains intricately woven with the threads of the yellow fever epidemic, serving as a poignant reminder of the challenges faced by the marginalized communities and the enduring legacy of historical injustices. Whitening policies in Argentina. As Argentina navigated the late 19th and early 20th centuries, a profound societal transformation unfolded through the implementation of policies explicitly designed to whiten the population. This strategic initiative, marked by the encouragement of European immigration, bore deep implications for the nation's social fabric. The deliberate promotion of a narrative steeped in European superiority not only shaped the demographic landscape, but also perpetuated the marginalization and erasure of the Black population from the national narrative. In the aftermath of the 1880 federalization of Buenos Aires, Argentina underwent significant changes, both politically and demographically. This period coincided with an ideological shift that sought to redefine the nation's identity. The prevailing sentiment, often referred to as the myth of racial democracy, aimed to create a homogeneous and Eurocentric Argentina. The belief in European cultural and racial superiority became a cornerstone of societal values. One of the key mechanisms employed to achieve this homogeneity was the active encouragement of European immigration. The Argentine government, influenced by positivist ideas prevalent at the time, viewed European immigrants as the means to fortify and improve the national stock. Policies were put in place to attract European settlers, offering incentives such as land grants and employment opportunities. The influx of European immigrants, particularly from Spain and Italy, reshaped Argentina's demographic composition. Cities expanded, and rural areas witnessed a demographic shift, marking the beginning of an era where the majority of the population became of European descent. This intentional alteration of the nation's racial makeup served as a manifestation of a broader strategy aimed at distancing Argentina from its African roots. Simultaneously, the narrative of European superiority permeated various aspects of Argentina's society. From educational curricula to media representation, the idea that European culture was more civilized and advanced became ingrained. This narrative, bolstered by the state, worked to eclipse the rich contributions of the Black population throughout Argentina's history. The deliberate emphasis on European superiority not only impacted the socio-cultural landscape, but also had economic implications. European immigrants were often preferred in employment, while Afro-Argentinians continued to face limited access to economic opportunities. This economic discrimination further marginalized the Black population, pushing them to the fringes of society. The first decades of the 20th century saw the institutionalization of these whitening policies. The government actively sought to promote a European ideal, creating a dichotomy that positioned European features as superior and desirable while marginalizing non-European characteristics. The promotion of Eurocentric beauty standards reinforced this hierarchy, with the media and advertising industries playing a pivotal role in shaping public perceptions. Despite the apparent success of these policies in altering the demographic landscape, the whitening of Argentina did not equate to a genuine erasure of its African roots. The Black population, although marginalized, continued to contribute significantly to the nation's cultural fabric. From the enduring influence of Afro-Argentinian music and dance to the preservation of cultural practices, elements of the African diaspora persisted beneath the surface. The mid-20th century brought about global shifts in consciousness, challenging long-standing notions of racial superiority. The civil rights movements in the United States and the struggle against apartheid in South Africa echoed worldwide, influencing societal attitudes towards race. However, in Argentina, the deeply ingrained whitening narrative proved resistant to change. In recent decades, there has been a growing acknowledgement of Argentina's diverse heritage. Efforts to